I had a request, and I figure I'll devote this video to fulfilling that request. One of my subscribers liked my matching the nib to the pen. And for example, let's pick a pen at random. This one right here. This is a Lakeside blue, lapis blue pen with fancy gold stripes and everything. And in my mind, and maybe in your mind, it needs to have a certain kind of nib. Now, yes, it should say Lakeside on the nib. This one doesn't, but let's pretend I had a Lakeside nib to put in it. And let's say I had 10 Lakeside nibs to choose from. What kind of nib belongs in a big, senior-sized, fat, long pen that's blue and has gold trim? What sort of person would buy this pen? Of all the pens to purchase at the shop, pen store, he or she chose this one over all the others to carry and use. What kind of personality does that man or woman have? What would their handwriting logically be like? And chances are that would be the perfect nib for this pen. Now, we do know that there are big masculine, hairy men with jet black hair and 5 o'clock shadow 5 minutes after they completely shave, and they're already growing a 5 o'clock shadow. And they speak with a very high pitched voice, and it sort of startles you, like, that doesn't belong there. He's supposed to be a basso profundo before he hit puberty, and then when he hits puberty his voice goes even deeper. So that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to get at. There's a certain personality or feeling that a pen and a nib and the owner all blend together to match. Now, I own all of these pens, and I chose, there were more pens in the pen show than just this one, but I bought this one, and I also bought all these other ones. So I'm a man of 1,000 faces, I guess, or personalities, and in a way I am. I draw in many different styles. I write and do calligraphy in many different styles. So it kind of makes sense that I have many, many pens to match my many, many personalities. So, but let's pretend for a second, we don't have to pretend, we know for a second that I do have a lot of pens, and at some point, I haven't done it yet completely, and maybe what I have to do is make my collection go from 3,000 to 300, and then I'd be able to do it. And maybe one day I will move my pens down to a manageable, logical sum where the pen and the nib and the use that I use for it all blend perfectly. And I'll have 300 pens that are absolutely perfect for what I do. But instead I have 3,000 pens that are not so organized. So I'm bringing you a few that I have actually meshed together perfectly and some that I haven't. So this one, you may have seen me actually find the right nib for it. I had a nib that was in it for years and years and years, and I hadn't used it much, but when I put this nib in it, taking it out of some other pen that it was in, and swapped it, put it in here, it worked better. Now this pen, the reason that I chose this nib rather than the one that was in it was this pen is heavy. It's also beat up. It has a certain indelicacy to it that seemed to demand or request. No, it demanded. It's a little bit brash. You can tell that by the raised threads here. This pen calls a spade, doesn't worry about political correctness. It just says, I want a different nib. God damn it, and I want it now. There's a certain aggressiveness to this pen that required a more a thicker nib. The nib that was in it was fine and flexible, and it needed a medium and flexible nib in it. So this one works. It may not be the perfect nib. Maybe it needs to be even a little bit broader, a little noisier than this one. But this is okay for now. This pen I recently bought on eBay, and the nib is perfect for this pen. It's a stub nib, and it's fine in a stub pen, but the little hard rubber ladies pen aspect to it bothers me a little. So what I'm going to do, if it comes out, and it is, I'm going to switch it, and I'm going to put it in the pen that I think it belongs in more, which is a short clipped version of this pen. This is the standard Wall Eversharp, and they're generally longer like this, and if they're shorter they have a ring top. But this one has a clip, so this was, quote, a man's pen rather than a lady's pen, and the nib that it has is fine for it, but when I have the ability to do this, I like to put a stub nib in a stub pen, because the weight of the pen moves forward, the balance moves forward, and I figure that that sort of nib will work fine in this pen, except it's not writing. Come on. The nib needs to go in a little bit further, and I don't want to force it now. I probably should have planned ahead and had these things soaking in water a little bit, so I will fix that later. Let me just take this out again. It might be, sometimes these are both wall number 2 nibs, and they both should be more or less interchangeable, but sometimes they're not. So I'm setting that in water to make that work. But I think you understand why I made that switch. That's a pen too that I might more likely use than the ring top pen. Though a stub nib, I don't generally use stub nibs for drawing. I use them for writing, and most of the time when I have to do that kind of lettering, I'm at my desk. so I don't need to have it clip in my pocket. This pen, Dr. Brick, and I have the pencil that matches it. This pattern is called Gothic, and I may have put in it a nib that is slightly, this is slightly stubby. There's a slight stub to it, but it's also very flexible. And I thought this would be great for this sort of Gothic lettering, Old English Gothic lettering. And Dr. Brick, I love the name and the typeface that it has. It's very blocky, and block, brick, makes sense. Block Gothic. This little Purina dog chow checkerboard thing is the pattern that's called Gothic for some reason. I don't know why. But I haven't used this pen in a long time. But it's flexible and fun, which is a little bit, you think of Dr. Brick as being matter of fact. There's no gray area with Dr. Brick. So the name sort of demands, if this was and maybe I have a inflexible stub that would fit this pen and the name better, because there's something about brick, that the Huff and Puff won't blow down. It's very sturdy and strong, and this is a little bit fragile. So maybe a firm stub nib would be better for this pen. In fact, I've made that decision. Yes, it would be better. This nib, this is a Sheaffer that is a stub nib as well. It's only slightly flexible. And it doesn't really belong in this pen, but it's in this pen, and I'm keeping it there until I throw it across the room, until I find a shorter version. I have a shorter version somewhere. So that the stub nib is in the stub pen. But because this is a pen that is very, very smooth to push it around, this is actually kind of fun to draw with rather than lettering. And when I'm drawing and not lettering, sometimes a longer pen works better for that. I don't need the balance to be more forward. So there's so many things involved in picking, in the use of the pen in this case, I think. That's what's happening there. Okay, this pen, this is a Parker metal Jackknife button filler pen with initials on it. And this pens always, this is a pen that looks like it was designed and built by a guy that builds torpedoes during the day. And he has this little business on the side where he's making pens for the ladies. But he can't help but be a guy. And so he makes straight lines. That's a very sturdy thing. It's all screwed together, threaded, and it's just this great thing. So what sort of nib does this have? This is a little hard to know, and I haven't selected in all of my pens nibs that I might have. I didn't actually select this nib to go in it, or I don't remember selecting this nib for it. But this nib kind of fits. The pen's weight is all forward. This is sort of the fulcrum when I'm thinking of, the weight of a pen, even if that's the fulcrum, 99 times out of 100 the weight is forward from that. But the pen is so short that the pen isn't even on the fulcrum. It's like a teeter-totter that's the board is flat on the ground. The fulcrum is here. So it's not even, there's no balance possible. It's flat. That's what this pen seems like, because there's no, and if I didn't post it, it would just be almost impossible to use, because there's nothing sort of applying the pressure needed to keep it in place. God, my hands are filthy. Its nib is slightly stubby, which makes sense for the shortness of the pen, if again we're going by my logic. There's a slight wider downstroke than a side stroke. A little bit flexible, a little rounded. I think that makes sense for this nib, this pen. The fact that it's a lady's pen, can I see a dame using this? Well, a dame, a woman that would go into a shop and buy this pen is a special kind of dame. She appreciates. She was raised in a family with lots of boys, and they all worked with their father, who built torpedoes or locomotives or whatever they were doing. So she was a tomboy, and chose this pen at the pen shop. Of all the ladies' pens to buy, she bought this one. So of course she wants to write with a very strong hand, and the nib is very rounded and a little flexible. She likes that push that she's able to give it. So this one fits. This pen belongs to this man, Mike McCool. It's a Sheaffer. Oh, well, it would belong to him better if it was a Sheaffer snorkel. It's just a Sheaffer touchdown. And as you can see, something's screwed up with it. What do I have to do to... That wasn't supposed to happen. No, this is annoying. Why is this falling off? Come on, come out of there. Shit. God damn it. Well, I've got to figure out why that happened. That's gonna worry me. Anyway, Mike McCool. This name is perfect for this pen. It's a Triumph nib pen. I thought if it was a snorkel, Mike McCool would just go around the school or the office and tell his fellows how cool is this snorkel. And Mike McCool, doesn't really have anything else going for him. He's pretty meat and potatoes, but he drives, the fast car, and there's no poetry in his life. It's all kind of show, and he has the coolest gadgets and the newest things that ever happened. And but what he says is very meat and potatoes-y. So this is the perfect nib for it. Non-flexible, sort of loud, but no poetry. in there. He's kind of a show-off. So he talks loudly, but he talks kind of in a monotone. Mike McCool does. He wants to be a international spy, but he's not sexy enough to do that. So he works at the accounting department of Uncle, or he could even be evil. He work at the accounting department at Thrush. I have to figure out why that broke. Well, I know why it broke. I mean, it unglued itself, so I have to figure out how to fix that before this is lost in my house somewhere and I'm screwed for the rest of my life. I should get a piece of tape and just tape it on it. Okay. This pen, I recently did a nib switcheroo on this, and it's a very heavy pen, like that Waterman that I showed you first, but it's a stubby pen. So the weight is all forward, and I like putting stub nibs into that pen, and this is this is better. I think if it was broader and wider, it would be better still, but this is better than the one it had, which was a fine nib. Fine and flexible, but this one matches its personality. What's this one? This is P-Nub. This is a engraving on it that looks like it says P-Nub, P-N-U-B, which is, I learned, slang for tiny, tiny, tiny penis. And I'm sure that this engraving predated that slang term by decades, so that's not how it works. This, ignoring the name, this nib is fine for this. You know, I don't see that there's anything wrong with a slightly fine, flexible, slightly delicate nib on this one. I probably wouldn't want to use this pen for sketching. I feel I might press down a little too hard and damage it, or rip the paper, because it's a little sharp. So it's okay. It's not perfect. I don't know what nib, I don't quite yet know what nib would be perfect for this pen, but it works for me. Okay, this is one that I was just fixing, so I'll put that over there. This one, I just retired this from my desk because I had a lot of pens that were similar to it. And it's very lightweight. It has an aluminum cap, which is very lightweight. It's black and silver, which is about as basic as you can get. And it has a very fine nib that's slightly flexible. And I was thinking, if the airship Graf Zeppelin or Hindenburg was still around today, this is the pen that they would have in the writing room. And it would be fitted with this nib because it's very fine. So it would use less ink, because ink is heavy, and you could write the entire passenger list, could write long letters in there or notes in their diaries with this pen, because you can fit so many tiny, tiny words in the little tiny, tiny space. Dear Diary, Captain Langsdorff. No, that's not his name. What was his name? Captain Langsdorff was on the Admiral Graf Spee. Captain X keeps winking at me over dinner. What could that mean? Could that mean? And then the next day, and there, I'm actually writing this, even though, can you even see it? Zoom in, zoom out. And then later on, Frau Linkmeyer says, "Dear Diary, my heart is broken, is dashed to the rocks below. He was winking at my son Fritz as I discovered them intertwined on the upper bunk when I returned to fetch my bottle of gin." So, this pen with one fill up of ink would be the one pen allowed on the Hindenburg, because its fine nib would be perfect for that fine tissue-like airmail paper that the Hindenburg will take back to Germany. So this pen with that use and this nib makes sense. If this pen had a stub nib, it wouldn't have an aluminum cap. It would have a big gold fill cap, and it would be heavier and louder and all that other kind of stuff. So that's perfect. Okay, this one, this is similar to that one. This is a pen that I bought recently, and it had a nib that was loud, and it does not want that. It's the wrong pen for that. Slender, lightweight, similar to this one. It's surprisingly light. And I didn't have an Eversharp nib to fit this, but I did have a Sheaffer nib, and the Sheaffer nib is perfect. Even though it's not correct, it's perfect. So if this was said Eversharp, it would be in fact perfect. So that nib fits this pen. Here's a Sheaffer pen. It has the nib that it came with, and no, is this the right nib? I have two pens that look like this, and I'll just test it out. I may have. Oh no, this is the right pen. I was looking for the engraving, and the engraving is here. Jean Green for Meritus Service in the Red Cross. And this nib is really the finest nib I think that I have. It's even finer than the one I just showed you, or it seems finer because it's coming out of this Triumph nib. And it's just an amazing nib. And a friend of mine said that this nib, the only thing you can do with this nib is to perform surgery on the brain of an infant, because it feels like a scalpel. So in a sense, it's neat that it belongs to someone that worked for the Red Cross. So Jean Green, with her knitting needles and pruning shears, or something. This is back in the time when maybe women that worked for the Red Cross could only go so far. They wouldn't actually perform surgery because that was a man's job. But maybe not. Maybe, I don't think of the Red Cross. If this said hospital of something or other, that would be different than, and it would say Jean Green, MD. And this wasn't a nurse, maybe. This is someone that gave a lot of money or folded blankets or whatever, made bandages. So this because this is in a tiny pen and it has a tiny nib, it's kind of right. It may be because it's a stub pen, it's a short pen, maybe it wants to have a stub nib. And I do have a pen just like this, same color and everything, and it does have a stub nib. And it works fine. But this one, because of the cap, and because this is the way it originally came to me, I'm keeping it together. Sometimes I can move things around without any problem. This one is another very fine, slightly flexible pen nib that I have in this pen. I don't know whether it belongs here, but it's been here for so long that it seems correct. It's a military clip Sheaffer. And again, maybe, for guys in the military that don't want to lug around yet another thing, having a pen that holds up, a fill-up of ink but can write, like the Zeppelin pen, can write forever and ever and ever, using just one fill-up. That would be kind of neat. So I don't know, again, whether that nib look better in a slightly thinner pen? Maybe. I use this pen not for writing, I use this pen for drawing, though. That might be a little bit, that might be making it seem more right than wrong. But anyway, that's that one. Conversely, the opposite of this pen is this stub nibbed, or this stub Wall Eversharp that I have a later, now what do I have in it? Actually, it may be the correct nib. I thought I had a Skyline nib in it, but I don't. I have a Skyline nib and another short one like this, but this one is I use for drawing, not for writing, though I could. But for drawing, I really like the bulldoggedness of the shape of this pen. It's short like this and fat, and it wants me to draw aggressively. So I have a big rubbery, really smooth nib that I can do my quick sketches of storms and tornadoes and earthquakes and stuff. Speaking of illustrations, a friend of mine, another a very talented artist, I'm not going to say another talented artist because that would be blowing my own horn, which I can do, I guess, if I want to. But he's really, really talented. He just graduated from grad school, and his favorite book, or among his favorite books, is the Don Quixote. And I read it years ago, and I said, well, I'll reread it again with you. And I came up with the idea, let's read it together. He'll read it in West Virginia, and I'll read it here in Boston, and he's going to try to read it in the original Spanish. I'm going to struggle with an English translation, and I said, let's each illustrate the chapter. Let's do one illustration per chapter and see, first of all, if we pick the same thing, is it going to be the battle with the windmill, or is it going to be some other, this chapter might have had something very poignant in it rather than so heroic as attacking a perfectly defenseless windmill. I don't remember because I read it so long ago, but we may draw the obvious thing, what the chapter's about, or we might draw something that is just tangential or a secondary part of it. But my friend Patrick has such a wide variety of how he draws styles. He can be very realistic. He can be very cartoony. He can draw in a very clumsy way, intentionally clumsy, it looks like, rather than actual clumsy. I know how to do actual clumsy, and I have a hard time making it up. I don't try to be clumsy. I am clumsy naturally, but he's able to put on the clumsy hat to sort of emphasize whatever it is he's trying to emphasize while he's drawing that way and painting that way. I don't want to say clumsy. He has a way of turning the knob on his brain and his vision to look like he's a child again. A slightly angry child. When he's in his child mode, he sort of paints very aggressively. I'm going to color outside the lines, God damn it, is what he's saying. So anyway, I'm going to have fun doing this project with him, and I hope I can continue to do it till I finish the book. Who knows? I don't know whether I'll draw with pen and ink. Maybe I'll draw with pencil. Maybe I'll draw with paint. I haven't figured this out yet. What I'm doing is I'm surveying some other pens that might fit with this grouping. There's some pens that, like this one, this Sheaffer with the Red Cross fines nib. This Sheaffer flat top pen, which seems like it should have a typical Sheaffer masculine, firm, rigid nib, doesn't. It has a fine flexible nib, but because the name of the owner of this pen is written in this beautiful script, it made sense that the nib be one of a nib that can write that beautiful script. So even if it's not exactly the right nib that I would automatically think of putting in a pen like this, it fits because of that name. I have two long Sheaffer pens, flat top in green, that both of these have slight stub nibs in them. And they don't really belong in these, but that's where they are now, and I might move them out of the way at some point. This one especially is interesting. It's very, very firm. It's very sharp on the side stroke. And I think it does belong in a short version, and I'm sure I have one somewhere. This one too is a slightly stub nib. but a little more flexible than stubby. It's a broad flex, maybe I would call it. And that too maybe doesn't belong in this pen. I don't quite know what senior side Sheaffer it belongs in. Maybe this is okay in this one. I don't really quite know. Broad nibs are no, does this belong more in Dr. Brick? Where's my Waterman pen? This is a Stub Nib. It's similar to Dr. Brick, but it's a little less. Maybe this one belongs in Dr. Brick. It's a little less flexible, a little firmer. I think this does. Maybe I'll do a switcheroo to put that over there. This particular pen, there's nothing about this particular pen that's calling for a stub nib. I just have it in here for some reason. But I think I will move it to the other pen. Oh, well, this is again where my pen collector, my boring pen collector self gets in the way. This is a later nib. It has a round breather hole rather than a heart-shaped one. And I just want to see if my eyes see that or if I'm just imagining it to be that way. Yes. So this nib does not really belong in a pen that's as old as Dr. Brick. So, too bad, Dr. Brick. This is that other stub that, again, is a later nib that belongs in this era pen, so I'll keep it there. This pen I came very close to selling to someone, and as soon as he put it down, I took it back and put it in the drawer and hoped that he wouldn't remember. But he did remember, and he wanted to address his wedding invitations, and I said, I'm gonna let you borrow it for that, because I really liked it, and it was one of the very first stub nibs that I liked. I have a number of them, but this one, because it was so smooth, it was really a pleasure to write with. And it's been in this pen forever. It was in the pen when I bought it, probably. It was in the pen in the, quote, shop when I decided to keep it. That it would seem wrong for me to swap it out for something else, even though it may not belong in this pen, using my logic that I've been explaining to you. It's fun, doing this exercise of nib swapping and stuff. If you have the ability, if you have 10 nibs that could go, if you have 10 pens, then they all have 10 nibs, and they're all the same size, and they all can be swappable. I'm sure that you could say, I use this pen for this purpose. I use this nib for this purpose, but it actually would feel better in a pen that's longer than one that's shorter. So make that swap. It makes perfect sense if the balance is right. If the balance is more correct with this nib, with this purpose, with this pen, by all means swap that. If you also want to go down further into that rabbit hole and match the correct, even though you can't take this, I can't take Mike McCool's name off the Sheaffer snorkel, the Sheaffer pen. I mean, this would be perfect-er on a snorkel because Mike McCool would have bought that one rather than this one. But he bought this one instead. Maybe the snorkel hadn't been invented yet. Even though they look like they're the same size, they're not. The barrel doesn't screw down on the this part and the sack are bigger or they're different on a touchdown, so that they are not interchangeable. Some might be. You might be able to use the same. It seems to me that part of it is interchangeable, though I forget. Okay, you're supposed to go out. Oh, do I have to unscrew there? No, that didn't help. I'm back where I started from. There we go. Now it's out. This pen has a screw, which is here, and that is supposed to screw into the back of this. Oh, it does have a screw. Good, 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 good. Let me just put this in here. This is a Phillips screwdriver, which is not going to work. I need a regular screwdriver to tighten. There's a screw back here that tightens into the top. And it's just that it's also threaded here that goes into that. And when I was unscrewing it, because this screw was not tight, and because the adhesive or whatever failed, that's why it came apart when it wasn't supposed to. Okay, I've got a snorkel right here. Don't I have a snorkel here? Here's a snorkel. Let's just test this out. See, this would be the pen that Mike McCool would have. He'd have the snorkel. So you see the snorkel has all this other debris in it that drives me crazy. So the thing is, this is narrower than this. This probably can go on no, it doesn't go on this either. So they're different. They're completely different. So never mind. This won't work on that and that won't work on this. So I'm stuck. Mike McCool, you're just out of luck. Mike McCool would have gone to the pen shop and bought the snorkel when it came out, rather than the touchdown, which is what this system is called. But he was killed in an automobile accident. In his automobile, he was able to buy the car he wanted, whatever car that was, which was a cool car. It was one of those, he bought a Tucker, one of those cars. He's one of the 33 people that bought a Tucker to brag to his workmates at Thrush or Control, and on the way there he was killed in a horrible accident. So there you go. Poor Mike McCool. What's interesting about this set, I bought this on eBay. Very happy to buy it, and I love the idea, I'm happy about the idea that Mike McCool did not buy these at the same time, I don't think. And the reason that I don't think that is Mike McCool's name here is vertical and in what's referred to as sort of a copperplate typeface. It has little tiny serifs on it, and it's all it's very vertical. When he decided, gee, I really do want that pencil, and he went back to the store and he bought the pencil and then brought it to the engraver. But the engraver, he didn't show the engraver this pen to match. So the name on the pencil is in slanted, slightly thinner lettering. And that's very interesting to me. That's what I'm imagining anyway. Mike McCool, before he was killed tragically in that auto accident, did like to bite the end of his pen. So there's that. The other thing that's sort of interesting about this is the name is engraved so if he's right-handed, he can see his name. He can turn it there to see his script. He loves saying his name. Mike McCool here. And if he needs help, if he needs a prompt once in a while, all he has to do is turn the pencil a little bit and he'll see his name. If he's using his pen, on the other hand, no, it works fine on that. Okay. Right? Yes, correct. When the pen is posted, the names are right side up. If the pen is closed and he's showing the set to someone, and he has the clips here, this is how you do it. He's showing the pen like this to someone, and he's saying, "Isn't this a great set I just got?" They're going to say, "Well, why did do the engraving upside down?" Because the pencil is right side up, but the pen is upside down when the cap is on it. So, again, that makes me again think that it was probably not engraved at the same time, because I would have thought the engraver would engrave them to be the same, to look the same, probably when they're not in use. But maybe the engraver knew that Mike would forget his name quite often and wanted, when Mike was signing the invoice for Control or Thrush, he knew that Mike needed to be prompted, so the pen uncapped, he'd be able to see his name correctly. How's that for a theory? I think that's a pretty good theory. What's your theory? Write your theory below. I hope you enjoyed this. It's probably not even 6 o'clock in the morning, and I've already made a mess of my hands and my desk and my pens. But I think, let's just go to let's see if this fits. This is the one that I wanted to do the switch for, and it's really tight. So I'm not gonna make that switch yet. I want to, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna put this back from whence it came. That's how I bought it. And that's, I'm sure, how it was sold originally over the counter. And I'm going to put this one back where it was, and this fits perfectly fine. The other one doesn't, and the other one probably doesn't because it's slightly thicker in gold content. So I might find a number 2 pen like this that has a clip that I can put her down. Or I'll just leave it the way it is. What the hell? This is okay for this one. It's nice having the weight forward for this particular pen. It's not really delicate. It's kind of bulldoggy. So it's okay. This one, you're fine. I still need to put a sack in you though. So you go back in the put a sack in you though drawer. Have we done? Are we done? I need to screw that together. These I can put back in the respective drawers. This goes up here because I use this one. This I use. This I'm using. This I use. Extra fine. I think these are all ones that I can put back in the drawers. Again, one of my plans, one of my hopes is that I will be able to condense my collection down from 3,000 to maybe 1,000. I think I could live with 1,000 pens. I think I could make that. I'm just looking at the name engraved on this one. D. Fleck. What would D stand for? Durwood Fleck. Dwight Fleck. Dick Fleck. No, it wouldn't be Dick. It would be R. Fleck. Richard Fleck. Don Fleck. Donald Fleck. Who knows? But if I were able to condense my collection to, let's say I have, and I probably do have 20 of these metal walls. Some are silver, some are gold fill, some are this pattern, some are that pattern, some are other patterns completely. And do I need a long pen with that pattern and a short pen with that pattern? Maybe I could. I'd like to have this pattern covered in my collection, but I don't need. You can imagine what this pen would look like if it were short. I'd have a short one, but maybe the short one could be a silver pattern like this. So if I had both of these, let's say, I could say this pen also came in gold, and this pen also came in that pattern. And you just have to imagine it because I don't have it anymore. Now I'm crying to myself because I don't want to let any of them go. Anyway, it's just the stuff that I think about instead of how to make the world a better place. I think about this, how to make myself happier. Anyway, I think that this is if you do have the ability to match up to your taste a pen with the right nib, try it out. You might like it. Bye.